For almost 5 years, Vladimir Putin operated in the shadows of Dresden, East Germany, as a KGB agent. His mission: to undermine Western influence and coordinate covert logistics, stockpiling weapons, and establishing safe houses for radical leftist groups like the Red Army faction, who terrorized West Germany during the height of the Cold War. But it was the night the Berlin Wall fell that truly tested him. As East Germany crumbled and chaos filled the streets, an enraged mob surrounded the Soviet KGB office where Putin was stationed. The streets of Dresden burned with uncertainty. Moscow refused to send backup. Putin, left with only a skeleton crew, was on his own. In that moment, risking his life, he didn't panic. He played a calculated bluff. Stepping outside, he faced the furious crowd and declared, in flawless German, that heavily armed Soviet troops were inside and prepared to act. That moment, cold, tense, and razor-edged, left a deep impression on Putin, forging the caution, control, and hardened resolve that would come to define his presidency. This is History with Magnus. Remember to subscribe. Vladimir Putin graduated in 1975 from Leningrad State University, now known as St. Petersburg State University, with a law degree and membership in the Communist Party already under his belt. Though he rose through the ranks on his own merit, Putin did have one intriguing family connection to the Soviet elite. His grandfather had once served as Joseph Stalin's personal cook. From an early age, Putin was drawn to the world of secrecy and strength, fascinated by martial arts and the shadowy realm of espionage. He also immersed himself in Marxist political theory and mastered the German language, skills that would later serve him well in the clandestine corridors of Cold War intelligence. Shortly after university, he joined the KGB, the formidable Soviet state security agency. Assigned first to counterintelligence, Putin monitored foreign diplomats and consular officials in Leningrad, keeping a close watch on international movements within the city. His aptitude for the work soon caught attention. In 1984, he was selected for advanced training at the prestigious Yuri Andropov Red Banner Institute in Moscow, where he received specialized instruction as a field agent. Putin's next assignment took him beyond Soviet borders to Dresden in East Germany, then named the German Democratic Republic. In Dresden, Putin operated from a quiet KGB outpost tucked inside a villa near the headquarters of the infamous Stasi, East Germany's secret police. His public role was that of a translator and cultural liaison at the Soviet-German House of Friendship, but behind the scenes, he was entrenched in intelligence work. Though far from a cinematic James Bond figure, Putin's role was no less critical. He focused on intelligence gathering and liaison operations, analyzing information rather than engaging in deep cover missions. His work often involved identifying promising targets, scientists, students, and foreign visitors, who might be recruited into the Soviet orbit using ideological persuasion or blackmail. Much of his mission centered on acquiring technological and industrial intelligence from West Germany, as the Soviet bloc sought to match the West's advancements. Working in close coordination with the Stasi, the East German secret police responsible for one of the most extensive domestic surveillance networks in history, Vladimir Putin played a subtle but strategic role in maintaining Soviet influence in the GDR. His mission: help identify and neutralize any threats to Soviet interests, ensuring ideological control remained firmly in Moscow's hands. Fluent in German, Putin built strong working relationships with local operatives, an asset that enhanced his effectiveness and gave him rare access. He was reportedly respected by his Stasi counterparts, a noteworthy detail considering the typical mistrust between Soviet agencies and their satellite state partners. While the Kremlin often kept its distance from the intelligence services of allied nations, Dresden was an exception. Here, the KGB and Stasi operated with a level of trust and cooperation rarely seen in the Eastern Bloc. Putin's office was located just steps from the Stasi's Dresden headquarters, symbolizing the closeness of the alliance. That relationship was underscored decades later, when in 2018 a Stasi identification card bearing Putin's name and photograph surfaced in the archives of Germany's Stasi Records Agency. The card granted him access to Stasi offices, though whether it signified formal membership or simply logistical ease for joint operations remains debated. During his 5-year KGB posting in Dresden, Putin found himself at the center of Cold War tensions. His responsibilities included monitoring Western military activities, but he was also positioned near one of the Eastern Bloc's most secretive and controversial endeavors: the covert support and surveillance of West German left-wing terrorist groups, most notably the Red Army faction, also known as the Baader-Meinhof Group. While no definitive public record directly implicates Putin in operational dealings with the RAF, he was embedded and played a documented role in harboring and monitoring key figures from a group. Given his posting, Putin would have at least been aware of, and most likely connected to, this secret network, especially since the safe houses and forged IDs were managed through bureaucratic processes Putin was involved in. Some historians even speculate that Vladimir Putin was the RAF's Soviet handler, though there is no concrete proof of this. The RAF was a Marxist-Leninist urban guerrilla organization that operated in West Germany from the 1970s through the 1990s. It conducted bombings, kidnappings, assassinations, and bank robberies, targeting what they saw as fascist institutions within capitalist West Germany and its NATO allies. As a radical left-wing group during the height of the Cold War, the RAF caught the attention of both Western intelligence services and Eastern Bloc agencies, not always for the same reasons. By the early 1980s, the Stasi began harboring RAF members who were in hiding after a crackdown in West Germany. With tacit approval from the KGB, Stasi operatives provided RAF fugitives with new identities and forged documents, safe houses, and apartments in East Germany. A famous example: in the early 1980s, RAF members like Inge Wyatt and Silke Meyer-Witt were given false identities and jobs in the GDR. The last member to be arrested was Daniela Klett, who were arrested in Berlin in 2024. These operations was highly classified and handled within Department 22 of the Stasi, which specialized in counterterrorism and foreign extremist groups, using groups like the RAF as proxies to sow discord without direct involvement, and had an interest in destabilizing NATO countries, especially West Germany. Check out my video for the full story on the Red Army faction. That kind of intelligence work, discreet, highly compartmentalized, and deeply cynical, fits with the mindset Putin carried into his later political life. It has also been alleged that Putin was the KGB handler for Rainer Sonntag, a neo-Nazi who founded the National Resistance Dresden and was seen as linked to the West German neo-Nazi and skinhead scene. Putin also operated as a spy in West Germany. He would cross at the famous checkpoint Charlie in Berlin, often using the name Mr. Adermov, an employee of TASS, the official Soviet news agency. Some sources suggest that Putin was actually expelled from West Germany after being suspected of espionage activities in the capital. But on the night of November 9th, 1989, the Berlin Wall cracked open, and with it, the grip of Soviet power in Eastern Europe began to crumble. East Germany, long a pillar of Soviet influence, was unraveling fast. In the days that followed, chaos swept through the streets. Crowds of emboldened citizens began storming the symbols of state control, including the feared Stasi headquarters in Dresden. One of their next targets, the nearby KGB compound, where the young Lieutenant Colonel Vladimir Putin was stationed. Putin was reportedly inside the building as the mob approached, angry, unpredictable, and ready to dismantle what remained of the regime's machinery. According to his account, he picked up the phone and urgently contacted the Soviet military command, requesting backup. The answer was chilling in its indifference. No orders from Moscow, no action. Putin, ever the tactician, resorted to deception. Stepping outside, he addressed the protesters in fluent German, warning them that the building was protected and that armed soldiers were inside. It was a calculated bluff, but it worked. The crowd, unsure of what resistance they might face, backed down and dispersed. Putin managed to save the KGB files of the Dresden headquarters and the files of the Soviet Cultural Center. This material was shipped into Russia, while Putin and his subordinates burned anything else to prevent them from falling into Western hands. This moment etched itself into Putin's psyche. Years later, he would describe how the silence from Moscow, the total absence of leadership, revealed to him the decay rotting the heart of the Soviet state. The lesson he took away was stark and personal. A nation must never be left vulnerable, rudderless, or weak. He left Dresden in 1990, but what he witnessed during those final months would shape the worldview that still defines his rule today. His conclusion was simple and unforgiving. Never again would he allow the state to be caught unprepared. Never again would power be passive. Amid this uncertainty, Vladimir Putin made a quiet but decisive move. He resigned from the KGB. Returning to Leningrad in 1990, Putin transitioned from spycraft to politics, taking a post in the city government under reformist Mayor Anatoly Sobchak. In 1991, Vladimir Putin was appointed head of the Committee for External Relations in St. Petersburg, a pivotal move that marked his first real step into politics and became a rising public figure. It's no coincidence that many of Russia's most powerful men today are former KGB operatives. Like Vladimir Putin himself, they didn't just survive the collapse of the Soviet Union. They adapted, recalibrated, and in many cases thrived. Years later, Putin would call the collapse of the Soviet Union the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century. The system that emerged in the wake of that collapse wasn't a break from the past, but a reinvention of it, shaped in large part by Putin and those who once served in shadow. Remember to subscribe.